As a radio DJ, I listen to music nearly every day. You stumbled into music in record stores, on Spotify, Tidal, you name it. And people always come to you with this stuff like, oh, I've got this new artist. But once in a while you stumble on somebody or someone that really makes you think. That actually even resets the whole way you look at music. And my musical guest tonight is a woman who did that to me years ago. A few months ago, she released her second record called Shabrang. And Shabrang is, her country of origin is Iran. In Farsi, it translates as palette of the night, colors of the night, or night color to be precise. She's one of the most exciting artists of the moment. And what makes it even more enjoyable is that she's an independent artist, not tied to a big company or pushed through our noses via the big corporation. She does it all by herself and her friends with her label. She blends her music from classical to punk, hip-hop, with visuals, clips that make it an experience that I have never seen before. And I'm happy that we can discuss this tonight with her. Her name is Sevdaliza. Give her a round of applause. That's okay.
Thank you.
We are here in Amsterdam in the Balie, and as you can hear, with a limited audience due to COVID-19. My name is Andrew, and welcome to a new episode of TOONZETTERS. TOONZETTERS is a series where we highlight important musical artists of the Netherlands. Maybe the most important musical artists. And tonight, for the next hour, Sevdaliza will be in conversation with a brilliant young man who hails originally from East Africa, Rwanda, Gunifort Uwambaga. Give him a round of applause, people. He's co-owner of Mendo, which is a publishing company and a bookstore in Amsterdam, and that focuses on visually driven publications. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I start with you, Sevdaliza?
Yes.
First of all, thank you for coming to the Balie, to TOONZETTERS, and thank you as well. Why did you want to speak with Gunifort?
I think that we have a lot in common, even the three of us.
Yeah.
You being perhaps more even somewhat inspiring to us.
Oh.
But I think we are all trying to build a new world.
Yeah.
And I think we have a lot in common. So I had a feeling that it would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah. Were you looking forward to this?
Yeah, definitely. I followed your career for years.
Oh, this shouldn't be about me. I'm just. But okay. Let's get away from this really quick. When did you guys meet for the first time?
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
You know, we sort of have the type of relationship which I can't say we've spent a lot of time physically together, but maybe for the last decade I feel we've been doing kindred work, to put it that way, and that has always been a connection. I feel that's real, and I can say this year we've been back in touch with each other, conversating a little bit more, and even spending a little bit of time. Yeah.
You spoke of building a new world?
Well, if you want to improve and if you want to change, then you need to think, I think, in those extremes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you met Gunifort for the first time, what attracted you to his character or what he does?
Well, I think he is a connector. I think he has the capability to make Mendo a very inclusive space and still have that same kind of classicism that a lot of people like ourselves would often feel excluded by. He's been able to transform this place, hub, and make it inclusive so that people like myself feel comfortable walking into that bookstore and also feeling like this is also my place to belong in.
Yeah. What do you think he did that made it inclusive?
Well, I think that he himself is a connector, so I don't think that he excludes anyone.
Yeah.
And by living in that, by living by that means, I feel that you automatically attract everything, and not just the one thing that you're focused on.
Exactly.
Does it make sense?
Well, I understand what you're saying,
yeah.
but because basically you have these super high-end bookstores or clothing stores, and you and I would just walk by and have a peek and okay,
Yeah.
And now you actually go in and you can
Yeah.
see pictures of the store. Gunifort, we have to explain, for the people that don't know, what is Mendo? Because it's not only a bookstore, it's also a publishing house in Amsterdam.
Yeah, definitely. So, as you just stated, Mendo is a bookstore and publishing company based here in Amsterdam. Yes, it's a company run by myself and my two partners. It's an independent publisher, which is something we're very proud of. And yes, we're purveyors of visual inspiration.
Purveyors of visual inspiration.
Yes.
Now you got to elaborate, unpack that. Just
okay. So
purveyors of visual inspiration. Yeah.
Nowadays, at least the theory is, you can put books on your e-reader. So a lot of content and a lot of information can be transferred digitally. So we like to focus on the inspiration that doesn't work per se online or in digital form, and that's our visual inspiration.
Yeah.
So it's a long way to say we make and sell coffee table books. So no novels, no autobiographies, just coffee table
And why?
books. Why? It has to do with tangibility for me. So the rate to which people nowadays receive information, let's say on Instagram, it's so high and it's so large, that volume, that I feel that a lot of people have difficulties filtering out what's worthwhile,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, what we try to do is be that curator and then offer you this beautiful, beautiful piece of information, encased in a book form, and that hopefully communicates confidence and trust that it's worthwhile to dive into whatever it is in that book.
And it's successful. In an era where people say the book is dead, he proves it's very alive. What's interesting about the two of you is that you're both creative. You don't only republish books, you actually make the books from scratch.
Yeah.
So there's a very big creative process added to what you do. And we might get back to that later on in this conversation. You are obviously an artist. I think you were 27 when you decided to go for music, which is also very interesting. But you're also a businesswoman, a label owner. So we have two creatives who are also entrepreneurs. And I'm wondering, what do you want to get out of this conversation? Do you want to, let's before we get into it, like what's the most important thing you would like to?
You know, for me, what's very interesting is, I won't talk for Sevda, but there was a point in my life, or the majority of my life, nobody would have ever labeled me as creative. And even till this day, it's a label or a job description or whatever that I have to get used to. So when you say you're creative, that's something for me that, I still need to get my head around. And I feel for Sevda, there was a time, and I remember that when we first met, and this could be like a decade ago, where not everybody saw Sevda yet, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is the cognitive dissonance, basically what every human being has to go through in order to, because you can like choose a job and then you can start to like live the job and then you become that. And that is a process. And I think that for both of us, the process of becoming is ongoing. But the choice of what we are has already been made by others and by ourselves.
That's another one to unpack.
Wow. Yeah.
That's another one.
So that's what I hear in his explanation.
And it's also something that you're very honest, as if you're sharing your journey with the rest of us.
Yeah.
You in the music and you in the books. Back to her music. Like, did you know her music first and then Sevdaliza? Or like, I'm trying to figure out...
timeline.
Yeah, I'm one of those lucky few that knew Sevdaliza first, and then got to know and learn and enjoy her music.
And what was your first impression of her work?
So from the get-go, Sevdaliza had a different sound and a different approach to music than everything else I've heard in the Netherlands. And I could hear that she had specific references that I super loved. So from the beginning, I was almost like, wow, is this music made by Sevda, my friend that I know? Mm-hmm. So yes, that's how I started listening to her music. And obviously, as everybody at home can attest and everybody in the room can attest, her music has grown to such a stellar level. So now I'm just a big fan.
Yeah. It seems with this second album, you already found your place, but you solidified it. I know, but I still know you also when you were like a rapper, and like there was this whole different, you were playing basketball, and like how long did it take for you to find you?
Well, I think that is an ongoing process. Yeah. And I do think that as soon as I had the ability and I gave myself the time to be alone in a room with my own music, then I started to kind of become myself. And I think that my process has been a subconscious one mostly, and that's why it has been a process towards the music that you hear now. Yeah. If I was working with a lot of people, I'm sure that the vulnerability and the cracking little things that I so love, I'm passionate about detail. I almost drown in details. I love details. I think that would have been drowned if I was in a room with a lot of opinions.
Let me rephrase, not to say when did you find yourself, but where did you find the courage to be all those elements of yourself? Because it's so impressive to see you in your work of art, hear your voice.
This is something that I see in a lot of people that are striving in whatever they're doing. If you don't have anything to lose, there is nothing to do but do that. So I think if you come from a place where you don't have anything, it's different than it's like this kind of situation of what can I lose? What is there to lose?
Let me just go.
Yeah.
So
what I hear from that is
that's that hustle mentality, I guess, that a lot of people around us have.
Most def.
Yeah.
And what I hear from your answer is you've already done the bravest step, right?
Yeah.
So the step to be a girl where she's from, and just live the life that she's led, to choose to become an artist, an international artist with everything, and to believe it, I feel that was the bravest step. So I can imagine that a lot of the creative decisions that you need to make nowadays, maybe for us and for spectators might seem as very brave steps and all.
But she's already done the most difficult part of it.
That's how I
Shall we
feel
have a look?
sometimes.
Because some people might be watching and they're like, okay, so I thought the other girl. Let's have a look at, that's a few years back.
Yeah.
Let's have a look.
It's true, in this life, I've never been the one. In your eyes, I've never been the truth. All you saw was a broken mirror, and they told me to care when trying to fix your heart. It's unfair, I'm trying to fix myself, and I care too much about you.
So if you haven't seen this before, you should go and do your homework, and then after this conversation, you can. YouTube is all yours. But 2015.
This was actually Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
But it was 2016. I think.
To
But it's the same
2016?
era. Yeah.
2016.
Yeah.
Like what were you doing creatively? Like where were you in that time?
I was trying to make something happen that everybody around me was saying that I couldn't do. So that was on a musical level, that was on a level that people were like saying that the music that I wanted to make is not gonna be commercial enough. The videos, they're too expensive, they're too grandiose, how, you know, so it was just about fighting against the current every day, every day, every day.
The other girl has, I think, 9 million views, which is not the video we watched. Like, it has been acknowledged by more than a few people.
Yeah.
What do you think that is, Gunifort? What does her work mean to you? Because you're smiling when I said that.
Yeah, also because I enjoyed this video. You know, for me, Sevda is a futuristic traditionalist. And I'll unpack that for you. Like you can see in her work, in her video, like she's a futurist. You know, she's and sorry, Sevda, if I say anything that you're like, nah, that's not.
Just
how
disagree
I feel.
if it's not true.
Yeah.
Because
No,
that's
I really
okay.
like it.
Futuristic traditionalist.
We always have the conversations about what is it that makes it, you know, what it is. And actually, he told me this a while back, and I was like, that is very close to what I would describe the fusion of elements that I like aesthetically, musically. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so continue because I'm all ears.
Yeah, so you know, we could unpack that on purely the sonic level.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard tunes by Sevda in which I'm challenged by like electronic synths and like, you know, futuristic stuff, and on the same side I hear harps and certain, you know, classical arrangements that remind me of Iran, of like, you know, the tradition of poetry in Iran, and to able to merge that together, that's something that resonates with me a lot.
Futuristic traditionalist, I think I get it. But where does the inspiration come from?
The inspiration comes from pure subconscious experience, taste. I didn't even analyze it until I had a discography that was worth analyzing. I started to see this thread of, okay, I think that this is what it is, you know? And I think it grew to that extent because of the level of work that I do myself in the studio.
Yeah.
So it's very personal.
In that studio, you record a lot with Maki,
Yeah.
a producer who lives in Rotterdam also.
Yeah.
Big hits. He's a next level producer. I'm interested in the way you literally record, because this is about inspiration. Is it true that he gives you all the space and you give him all the space, but you literally give each other the space to do whatever you want to do?
Yeah, it's true.
How does that work?
I really don't know. Like, we don't actually talk even a lot about music.
Okay, so
I'm in the studio by myself, and then a lot of the times when I'm working, he's downstairs, and when he's working, I'm downstairs.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like I go in, I record myself, I kind of arrange everything. I'm working with chords. I don't write, so I usually freestyle and then kind of start to arrange words, and then suddenly I have this concept. So I really do not traditionally songwrite or work with songwriters or composers. That whole process is in my range, and then after a few hours, I would say I have this kind of palette, and then, or maybe outlines, and then I go downstairs, and it's often like, it's like, okay, I'm done. And then I sit, and he goes upstairs. And then he does a little bit of producing, and then it's a switch. So it's like, okay, he produces a little bit, and he gives it to me. I go on with the composition. I produce. He comes back, he tweaks, we tweak, and it depends on the song. It could go on for a year. Yeah.
Wow.
And we've really reached this state where we don't even talk anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is great.
like the producer usually comes in and is like, no, you're off key. And
I think he
that's
knows really well that that would not work with me. Plus, he is genuinely, he understands the flow of music as well as I do. So it's like, I once heard Pharrell saying, when somebody comes into his studio, they don't talk. They immediately start to make music as a form of conversation. I think that words can kill vibes and are overused, and egos are over-presented. It's all really not necessary.
You've got me convinced. I feel like a small child who's asking a stupid question.
Yeah.
But okay, but then like the business side, like when songs need to be 3:30 or like you think about what's the single, is there any conversation about like adapting what you're doing? So, subconscious. Don't laugh at me. Like, no?
I'm trying to make eye contact with my manager. No. I decided everything.
You decide everything.
You know, Sev, you just said the word flow.
Yeah.
Like he understands my flow, we understand
Yeah.
each other's flow, and I wanted to unpack that a little bit. So, when it comes to this creative stuff, right? Because I'm not a creative, I've tried to read so much about this thing called creativity to unpack what it is, right? And basically, they say you have these two states. One is called apathy, and the other one is called flow. And the apathy state is where you have a task which requires low skill and you have low motivation, right? So that's basically watching Tiger King on Netflix. That's apathic state. Then on the other side of this spectrum, you have this thing called flow. And flow is where you have to perform a task which requires high skill, extreme high skill, but you're also extremely motivated, like intrinsically motivated. When those two things come together, you reach a flow. So it might perhaps even sound like you guys are just goofing around, or it's like very ad hoc, or like, but it's actually the creative state.
How do you do that with your books? Where do you find your inspiration?
So,
For example, Martin Garrix. I think we have the picture of the Martin Garrix book.
yeah.
So here's a young guy who tops the world's list of DJs. How does that work? From scratch, this is the book.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Okay, so as a starting publisher, you sort of need to strategize how you're going to reach the point that you want to reach. And for me, that's a point in which I have complete freedom to produce and publish any book I would like. No matter what the story is, if I like it, if I believe in it, I can produce it. So one of the things is, I just told you, I've researched this thing called creativity, and I've always been interested in artists. For me, it's almost like this enviable job in life. You can create and you present it to people, you have this direct feedback loop, like it sounds amazing for me. So I was like, okay, I want to make books one day with Beyonce, with Sevdaliza, with like, I had this short list of amazing artists I want to make books with once. But how do you reach that point? Because luckily, I know Sevda, but those other artists I had no idea. So the way I tried to figure that out is we looked in our network here in Amsterdam, like who is, the artist which can help me make this beautiful proof of concept, basically. And that was Mr. Martin Garrix. He used to come and buy books in our bookstore. So one day we just asked him, like, I think we should make a book together. And what was interesting to see is that artists experience so much, and a lot of it is documented, but it's not categorized or archived properly. And that was this book. So for 2 years, I had a photographer. It's actually Martin Garrix's best friend called Louis van Baar. Travel with him and document everything he was doing. And this is pre-COVID.
That was the result.
Yeah, this boy was traveling 300 plus days a year and doing all of that. So this is the resulting book, Life is Crazy. And luckily, because of this project, many artists were able to find us with inquiry whether we would like to make a book for them.
Yeah. Beautiful story.
Thanks.
And do you relate to the subconscious way that she works? Is there any sort of like a subconscious or spiritual element to what you do in publishing these books?
Yeah, so in my development, that's actually something that I'm actively trying to grow and foster, to be more in touch with my subconscious and more in touch with my intuition and stuff like that. So my background is in academia. I was like super nerd and studied, and that's a bit also, I think, where some of the love for books come from. So I'm trained to think very pragmatically, actually, and to every time when I feel I'm doing something which I haven't thought of before, I haven't analyzed and decided I'm going to do this, it actually gives me some sort of anxiety. So to be honest, Sevda is a person in my life that's actually helping me at the moment to be in touch with that. And you can roll your eyes, but you know.
I was snooping around on your Instagram, and I saw, were you at like a yoga session or something, like doing something spiritual? It looked very spiritual.
Yeah.
Please explain.
Yeah.
We had like a session where we went into like, it's like a body movement / yoga situation.
I would dare to step in.
So yeah.
How was it?
It was intimidating at first, but yeah, actually super good, and yeah, just a lovely experience, and I hope to have more of those sessions together with you.
Yeah.
I want to get back to a bit more of your music, and I hope we have the right clip now, because could we see Road, a bit of Road? Yeah, just a minute or so. The latest. Yes.
Yeah, that's Road.
Oh, solitude, my own. I have lived too long. I felt familiar in stranger homes, in a dream.
It's got me. Like, it's so, it's like you can, when you listen to classical music, you can, not like I know a lot of classical music, but recently I've been listening to Debussy, and like, you can hear some of his stuff and you're just like, oh no, I feel bad, or feel very bad and then feel happy, because it does, it reaches your gut. Mm-hmm. Was that something deliberately that you deliberately tried to do while you were making this record, like really sonically touch us?
You mean the second record?
Yeah.
I think that the second record was about deepening my sonical landscape. Yeah. And I was in a very tough situation because I was learning how to make music and I was making music at the same time. Plus, I wanted to make like my big debut. And Shabrang was more like, okay, now I understand the game. Now I want to play. So I could play more with my own style, make it more refined, go a little bit left, go a little bit right, explore a little bit more. At the time where I was making the record, I was also traveling a whole lot. So I was like traveling nonstop. So I feel like I also brought all of those experiences back into the record, because sometimes I was traveling for a month in between recording. So this record, I feel for me, you can sense that it's not one flow. It's more like a diary of 10 years of experience pushed into one record and molded.
Shabrang is also a mythical figure?
Yes.
What's the story behind that?
It's a black horse, and it's a Persian myth. I really love mythology, and especially from my own culture and heritage. I think that the heritage that I carry with me holds so much interesting knowledge and stories, and explains even why I make certain choices or why I do things the way I do. And the story is about someone that's being falsely accused of certain trickery situations where Siavash, that's his name, and with this horse, the horse is the only companion that he has left, because everybody thinks that he's guilty. And with this horse, he's able to flee the country through landscapes of fire, snow, and basically the horse saves him from all of his hardships until he's proven innocence, and then they allow him back into the Persian Empire. So it's a very interesting story about holding on to your own beliefs and kind of fighting for justice, for your own recognition of who you truly are. And I also love that the fact that the horse was his only companion, because I think that animals carry a special power.
Sev.
Yeah.
Go ahead, brother.
You know how we flow. While you were talking, I was thinking, I know this another story,
Yeah.
which is a myth, which also has an animal in it, and which also has a false accusation in it. And it's actually where I got my name from. So, my name Gunifort. My parents were Catholic, or are still Christian, and a traditional Catholic, in the Catholic tradition, you would give your son or the name of the holy of that day. So I don't know if you've ever been to the Vatican City. You have like all these people there were made holy post their death. And so you have the holy Paulus, the holy Matthew. Okay, the holy Gunifort. The holy Gunifort is the only holy figure which isn't a human. It was a dog, actually. And the story goes as followed. In the Middle Ages, in Germany, Prussia, Germany, there was this knight, and he had a beautiful, beautiful baby daughter. He was supposed to become the princess of Prussia. And one day he had to go out for battle, and he left his most trusted, his best friend dog to protect his little baby. It's actually one of those windhonden, like the running dogs. So man comes back from battle and walks into the castle and sees blood all over the walls, etc. And he sees Gunifort, his dog. He sees his baby dead. He gets out his sword and he murders the dog, only to find out later that there was a snake that entered the castle and tried to attack the baby girl, and the dog defended the girl with everything that he had. And this story was then, I believe, in like the 18th century, was awarded with the holy making of Gunifort, and that's where I got my name from. So, just
Lord have mercy, Gunifort. Gunifort.
So your parents
Name me after
knew
dog.
this story or read it, or?
Yeah, so they just looked into a book which they had back then with all the holy names with it matched with the date.
Stories.
And me later, because the internet, I was able to Google this Gunifort, because I'm the only person in the world with that name. And then I found out this story.
That's nice.
Yeah.
This man is next level. Back to road. I'm trying to, because I don't want to forget. What are you wearing in that video? What is that?
I'm wearing a harness.
And why?
I think it's just like trying to show this, I would say, sensuality, or a portrayment of a woman that is not portraying to be liked or loved by the mainstream. It's just like, this is my embodiment of power. This is how I feel at that moment, and this is how I want to show it.
Yeah.
So it's,
Because, it's like, I wrote it down for myself. It's like, you're not only the work of art, you're like the Mona Lisa, but you're also the artist that paints the Mona Lisa. And like and me as a consumer, when I comment on your work, says more about me than it says more about you. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, so God bless. But then, having that being said, you're in an arena with all these people, and I love them all, WAP and Megan Thee Stallion, and the list goes on and on, where perpetuating of stereotypes could be going on, sex, and you're also sexual or sensual, but it's different. Isn't it difficult? How difficult is it for you to push your own narratives in an arena as an independent artist, as a woman, that is filled with all these other, I don't know. You understand what I mean?
Yeah. Well, this comes back to what Gunifort and me were talking about earlier. Every level has its devil, you know? So as you move up, it's not getting easier. There's just inserting new problems that you have to solve, whether that is creative, whether that is business-oriented. It doesn't really matter. One of those things is that when you are cultivating or cooking your own story, your own narrative, you never really realize, you know, except for when you're signed to a label and an A&R is going to develop your image. That's a whole different ballgame. But in my case, I never realized that my image would become something that would partially become public property or placed into that arena. So for me, it's not hard. I think for others, it's harder. Like, I'm just being myself, that changes, that fluctuates. I'm evolving, I'm growing. Some periods I don't feel like embodying the Sevdaliza that is out there, so I don't. And sometimes I feel like I need to change, I need to take a step forward. So no, for me, it's not really difficult. What is difficult is if you get too much attached to the image that others created of you. That is what gets difficult. And that's why I feel like as artists, you should stay far away from reading too many comments. Because basically what you're doing is your brain is validating you by those words. And maybe if you hadn't read them, you would go a whole different road, down a whole different road that made you a lot happier than becoming the.
But don't you have a very carefully curated image? To me, it seems as if it's... No?
No. I mean, it's not carefully curated, but it's personal, and you're not used to that because you're used to seeing an artist that is surrounded by 10 creatives.
Yeah.
So that's when it gets curated.
Yeah.
I'm Sevda. I wake up every day like this.
And then when you wake up in 2017 and you write a song in Farsi against the Muslim ban by Donald Trump, who luckily is now departing, hopefully, you risk damaging that not carefully constructed image, but however you want to call it. Why do you do that?
I think that I handle from intuition, intuitively.
Yeah.
It was a very intuitive choice. I think that the whole process of making that song and releasing that song was like 5 days.
Yeah.
So it was not at all. So yeah, definitely you have a lot of risks, you know. You're also responsible for the entire structure.
That's why I want to know.
Yeah, you're responsible. So you cannot deflect that on your lawyer or, you know, your A&R who made a bad choice, who gets fired. So yeah, I make the decision, so I also carry the weight for what happens with them.
But you did it anyway. Gunifort.
Yes.
Yeah.
How does somebody go from being a private banker to a book publisher? What was the underlying urge or like mission that brought you to where you are?
Yeah. Okay. So this is. I love the question. Just looking at the time, it's a question I could answer in an elongated way or a short way.
Give us because we still need to get into the business side of what you're doing.
And actually the link to Sevda and your previous question, right? So basically you asked her, I heard you say Megan Thee Stallion, WAP, like one of the biggest songs of this year, right? And Sevda's art and you know, how she makes her decisions and how she doesn't portray herself as people perhaps expect, right? Okay, so actually the choices Sevda made in her life were very similar to the ones I made in my life. So I came to this country as a refugee, with a very ambitious mom. So I had to study, finish my studies, went to work at a bank. That's the very short story.
Yeah.
But within this 10 years, the last 10 years, I've had the luck to surround myself with people who are choosing to do stuff that's outside of the expected. And that inspired me so much that after a while I was like, that's my path and I'm going to choose for it. So in my life, the equivalent to WAP by Megan Thee Stallion was working at the bank. That was, what everybody expected of me, and that was what my success was supposed to be.
Yeah. How does your African heritage fit in what you do? Like, does it play a role? I think so, but I just wanted to hear from you.
Yeah, it plays a very big role. The same how her Persian background plays a paramount role in her art. So one of the things I'm very passionate about is to almost show how in different creative fields, whether it be the spoken word, whether it be music, whether it be art, painted art, photography, how a lot of the stuff found its origins in Africa, or how we as the continent of Africa have influenced specific stuff. I love highlighting that.
Yeah. You even brought a book by Robert Farris Thompson with you.
Yeah.
That's one of the. Could we just show the book? Robert Farris Thompson. Yeah, Flash of the Spirit. Could you? Why is this a book everybody should check out?
So, I wouldn't even say this is a book that everybody neans to check out.
Oh, okay.
This isn't for everybody.
Okay, that's
but
good.
For the people at home and the people in the room, this is a book you guys need to check out. Okay, let me try to answer it this way. This book pertains, it shows, as you can read a little bit in the subtitle, it shows how modern day art and philosophy were heavily influenced by Africa and Afro-Americans, right? That's very short. In the last 2 years, we've come to experience how hip hop, for instance, is really something. It's at the center stage of music, and this book traces that back then to the Yoruba tribe in Nigeria and explains that. Why I say this isn't for everybody? I am African. I'm born and raised there. So this book I use it as a tool almost to unify my current self with what I feel I should be. Mm-hmm. And I know this sounds a little bit esoteric and wavy, but it's in the same category as if you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're heading.
Sevdaliza, I was reading up on you, and what struck me was a moment where you performed at a conservatory, and there was a professor who was like, "You're doing something with the deep undercurrent of music from Iran," and you were like, "I don't know." What does such an experience do with the musical side of you, and what role does Iran and your heritage play in your work?
I agree with Gunifort, and I think that I relate to that esoteric meeting of who you think you should be and who you are.
Yeah.
And the last few years for me have been interesting because I realized that culture and heritage are separated things. Culture is something that I not always agree with, but heritage is like a huge kingdom of richness.
So what do you mean when you don't always agree with culture?
Well,
could you be explicit?
I think that the beauty of things lies in what we have created to be beautiful, not the way that culture or heritage has transformed into a culture with people saying to people, you should do this, or you should behave like that, or, I think those things can be limiting, and they also carry some sort of stigma. It has the potential to separate and to create some sort of classicism within a country. And I don't really, that's why I needed to understand that I can dive into my heritage without having to live like a cultured person.
Are you saying that the culture you were raised in, or coming from Iran, that was at moments something that was limiting you?
Well, no, because I didn't really experience that.
Okay.
My parents were not limiting me with culture. But yes, of course, if you look at the current state of my country, it's very limiting for a lot of people, like even any form of art which is not religiously informed is prohibited. Yeah. So that says enough.
And then back to the professor who says you're actually doing something that has a very long tradition with music from your country that you didn't know of.
So I warmed up to that.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, then, if I'm singing in a way that this professor is saying, are you from Persia because you're using certain scales and microtones? And I was like, okay. I didn't know because I never studied singing. So yeah, I definitely warmed up to the idea that I carry a huge, rich trail of Persian DNA, and that comes with a lot of information that I'm channeling that I'm not even aware of consciously. Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking to me. I'm still thinking about, I also want to talk about the industry side of things before we end this conversation. But if I can just go back to what we were talking about, like creatively, if I would ask you to say, like, where do you see looking forward to your next project, so what are things you want to explore, like areas of yourself, or would you want to do maybe some acting? Or I'm interested in your creative journey. Maybe Gunifort, give us a suggestion, because you sound like a good advisor.
So for me, Sevda is one of the most powerful Iranian Persian artists on this globe at the moment. When you guys were discussing why did you make a decision to create some music that pertained to Orange Men in the States, I would almost ask, how come not every Iranian artist was on that ball and like doing that? If you understand a little bit what I mean. So for me, it's what I wish for Sevda is increased alignment of who she can become and how she feels that she is. If you understand a little bit what I mean, I feel sometimes when we hang out or we discuss your work, I even feel the crazy responsibility that's on your shoulders just because you're doing something that's so unique. So.
And the back to you, like, what would you like if you could speak it into existence?
I will, because I already did this. I think that I want to go places and do the impossible in every kind of way. I think that drives me. Mm-hmm. I want to let my work speak for itself and then kind of see what will happen, what will come from it. And definitely also I believe in holistic living, a holistic lifestyle. So it's not just about work for me. It's about gaining mental clarity, working on health. We have one body, we have one mind, so I'm very mindful of that. Private life is very important to me. Building a structure that is a healthy place for both work and private, and then also being able to sustain it for not only myself but my community is very important to me as well. Yeah.
And no movie. She's going to do a movie, but she's just going to tell us yet. She's just going to wait, and then we'll see it.
A movie or an opera.
Or an opera, or well, okay. Great. She's not gonna give it to us today. It's not going to happen. It's okay. That's what I do want to talk about going into the last segment of this conversation, which I'm grateful for you to taking time out to do this with me. You spoke about private and health and safety. Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and all the killings that have been going on have actually readdressed an issue not only within the black community, but broader, that when it comes to culture and music industry, we also need to talk about better pay for work, safety for women, sexism, misogyny. How difficult is it for you as a woman who runs an independent company to manifest and do what you do in a male-dominated space that is toxic at many times?
It does really take a lot of endurance, strength, and commitment. But I do think that as women, and especially as minorities, you are kind of used to that position of the underdog. And I believe that in this world, in this current world, because this world is far from perfect, but it has also evolved so much more from what it was. In this world, if you know what you are from the inside, then you could also understand what you are for the world. And if you know that, you can use that to your advantage. So instead of being not aware of that, I chose to be aware of it and realize that I needed to go through certain hardships that others might not have. But I think if you just look at it from a spiritual perspective, you might need to go through certain things to get to a certain place. Mm-hmm. And for instance, I was on the phone with 2 directors from Yemen 2 days ago, because we're working on a project together, and they're both female. And basically they wrote me, and I was like, yeah, let's do this. And they were both like shocked. And I was like, why? I am you. Why are you shocked that I choose to work with you? Because for me, it's so much easier to work with them than to work with all due respect, somebody that has been granted everything. And so then when we started talking, I realized that there is this kind of scaling that we also believe in. So it's not only about what the world says we are, but we also believe that. And I think...
Could you give me an example? Like the world says, towards women, like what women are, or what women should be, or what women of color should be?
For instance, look, I think that, for instance, when let's give an example in fashion.
Yeah.
Street culture, I don't like that word, but it has been used a lot, yeah, has infiltrated fashion. Mm-hmm. And it filled the gap, between high couture and unaffordable fashion and like low affordable fashion. Your friend, he's one of the main filling pieces, one of the people that was like a gap kind of bridge builder, connector. This causes that we are kind of breaking down the classicism system in fashion. Like, why is Chanel just for a type of person? Why can I not wear Chanel? Yeah. And I feel like we should also see each other and see ourselves and imagine ourselves in those places because we belong there. Yeah.
It's actually one of our shared passions, I could say, or interest, or however you would like to define that, is that, we know we deserve X, right? And we know our people deserve X. And I think we both love also, not even convincing, but showing by example that, no, you can choose what space you want to inhabit. You can choose what content you consume. You choose all of that stuff. Yeah, so I love your answers.
What type of experience did you bring to the publishing a business as a former private banker? Because people don't know, but you worked at Mendo. You were just like, you like walking around with books there in the weekend, and during the week you were working as a private banker. Some of your clients saw you in the weekend, like what's my private banker doing in this store. Then you leave banking, so then you become a co-owner. And then, but what do you then bring to this publishing business?
My learnings from my study and the limited experience in private banking, what I used in publishing is I was able to pretty much look at the business proposition of publishing that's been around for hundreds of years and conclude like it doesn't make sense in 2020. the gatekeepers, the way manuscripts are reviewed, but even the entire, just the business proposition.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm.
So you discovered that it was crazy aged, basically.
Yeah, it was super aged, archaic.
Same for the record industry.
I would say that.
It's even a little bit. I think the record industry is a little bit younger and a little bit more diverse.
Well, there's more breakage already. I think your world is very guarded.
Yeah, to answer your question, yes, I brought in those elements because also another thing that me and Sev have in common is, yes, you can make creative work or you can make something that's special nobody else does, but at least I enjoy also when the business makes sense, right? So, that's where I can put the label work towards your activity, But I have to say, the thing I feel I brought most into the publishing world, in this book world, is not per se my academic background or my professional background, but it's my story and my life background.
But then it's still very difficult being an independent publisher because publishing books cost heavy,
yes,
low margins. So how do you, people are watching and they want to be an independent publisher, and they want to be like Sevdaliza, give us a scoop,
so
a little bit.
So it remains a very complicated proposition and definitely not a very lucrative one. And it is something that I'm still figuring out, to be completely honest. But you know what, I could say the following. I think what differentiates myself from all publishers that I've met so far is I take the emancipation of the consumer very seriously, right? Yeah. I know that the consumer at this moment, they're smarter than they were 10 years ago. They demand more. They want to know who's behind a company. Yeah. They need to know that you're not, taking from marginalized people. They need to know what your position is towards women and, Black people and LGBTQ. So, yeah.
That's good. Mm-hmm. Sevdaliza, you have your own label, Twisted Elegance. I was wondering, I had a few questions, but looking at the time is absolutely not on our side. But I would like to know, what did working independently teach you with regards to your own imprint that you have out?
That you will never sleep again.
Well, what was the name of the record label?
Twisted Elegance.
Okay, so we discussed earlier traditional futurist.
Futurist.
And I also hear it in the name of your record label. That's also a dichotomy. We're listening to Road, your song, and for me that's like the most fragile punk song I've heard in a while, right? So you have this dichotomy up to you.
Gunifort, you need to do a radio show, man. The way you speak about music, it's fascinating. But I do want to know more than just that you never sleep, because a few years in, you were in too deep that you said I can't go back, and you continued. Why?
I feel like that this is the beginning of, it's such an interesting time. We have major musicians speaking out about traditional platforms like the Recording Academy, and you have all these, the contracts leak of Kanye a while back. He published all of his contracts because he wanted people to understand what he had signed, or I think he even asked people to explain the contracts to him as a form of community. I think that the world is changing in such a fast pace, and I think that the music industry is becoming an interesting industry.
Aren't you afraid that it's going to be the same devil with a different face?
Well, I think that if you are relying on it, then you should be afraid. But I am relying on my people, I don't need a record label at this moment. And maybe if the industry changes, if I change, or the construction changes, I think that I've always had this feeling that it's not the people that are the devils, it's just the way that the business has been set up. The business has not been set up for artists to make a living or profit off of their music. It's for everyone around them to make profit. That's why we see this year that all huge artists that are not touring are losing huge amounts of money because they hardly make any money off of music alone, which is strange. Like that is your product. Yeah. Why are you not making money from that?
And as a woman, we spoke about it a bit, and I referenced WAP, but I also want to very clearly say that obviously Megan Thee Stallion has all right to do whatever she wants to do, because I'm not going to judge that. But I do want to know from your perspective, in your experiences, do you have as much freedom as men have in the record industry?
No, of course not. I don't even have freedom to walk down the street in the evening. Like women will not have the same freedom as men have. Like the world needs to completely change for that to happen. But do I think about that every day? No, not at all. Because I just accept that the world has evolved to this point and to this place. And I know that my parents have done a great deal into coming here in order for me to even have this career. So I try to not linger.
You ever thought about giving up with this independent road you're on?
Yeah.
Okay, but when?
Depends on the day of my cycle.
Oh, man, she's knocking me. I give up. I'm here with two philosophers, and I'm going to go home knackered. Well, depends on your cycle. Like, you don't have to give me everything, but there is like a more like.
Well, it truly is. I feel like it truly is the way that you experience things, and not the way that the things are.
Yeah.
Because like, there's always an overload of things. Yeah. But one day you can handle it, and one day you can't. And then sometimes you're just like, I once gave an interview, and I explained to the journalist, like, I sometimes feel like I'm standing in a huge castle that I've built brick by brick. And sometimes I just get overwhelmed by what I've built. I think that's very normal as a human being. So yeah, that happens every once in a while, but I feel like the passion for what I create is so strong that it sucks me back in. Yeah. Like it takes 2 days, and then I'm like
then you're back
driving to the studio thinking, I think I wanted to quit 2 days ago.
Gunifort, you use the word purpose-driven to describe what you do at Mendo. And when I was a young man, I was like, capitalism can never be purpose-driven. But actually, I really like the word. But where did that come from? And why do you want to educate? It seems as if you're even educating your customers, or like trying to teach them something. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So, elaborate on it, looking at the time. No, Go ahead. Yeah. Sev has highlighted a couple of times that the world is changing, and that's something very positive, and it means that people are becoming more open. But becoming more open doesn't mean you have knowledge automatically or experience automatically. It just means that you're taking a more receptacle position, right? So it's not that I want to teach with Mendo, but I just see it as an amazing opportunity. We've created a space towards people love to go and spend time in. They already come because what we did in the first 20 years of Mendo, even before I was part of the team, they taught the consumers about these coffee table books and that medium, so the customers already know it. And now I try to sneak in the content of those coffee table books, I try to sneak in some new information. Yeah.
Well, what's the purpose then?
So for me, the purpose is simple. Sev and I are both in diaspora, as we say. Our entities, we weren't born here. Life brought us here. And one of the things I love to show people is, first, have respect for people that start up from ground zero, And that's not only the story of refugees, that's the story of women, that's the story, as we said earlier, LGBTQ, everybody that's marginalized. And for me, basically, that's the purpose that you read in our description, is that, the people that get opportunities already, we try to stay away from. And everybody, I have a feeling that at a traditional publisher, they would get a no, or they wouldn't even get a conversation. We would love to work with them. If that answers your question.
Yeah. Oh, more than I'm okay. I'm okay. Sevdaliza, I was also interested in getting a bit of an insight in how you make your decisions to who or what. For example, the ladies in Yemen. How do you pick your partners?
Intuition.
Into subconscious.
Yeah, and I feel like the more I stay on that path, the more that the choices make sense. Not saying succeed, but they make sense, because sometimes you need to learn something, sometimes you need to experience something, and I feel like, I try to follow my intuition, and also just, the work starts to speak for itself when the volumes are increased. So I have more, like, you have an array of books now, so I have an array of songs. So I also feel like certain type of people reach out to me now, and I don't need to, I don't have a presentation, or not that I used to do that, but
people come to you. Actually, you're busy selecting and saying no. You're saying no more often than that you say yes.
Sometimes I do reach out, but I do feel like most of the times people reach out to me. Yeah.
And working in a COVID situation. Oh, you wanted to say something?
Oh yeah. Very badly actually. Just because I find it so interesting. You said the more work you do, the more sense it makes what you're doing. So me and Sev had this conversation like 2 months ago about, I called her a superstar.
You
right?
did?
I don't know if you still remember this.
Superstar, and what was the other one? Futuristic traditionalist.
I'm going to keep this one,
that one
very short for you. But I tried to explain to her a superstar is the only entity in this universe which the nature laws, the laws of nature, they bend around, around a superstar. Okay, that's one thing that I wanted to highlight. Then, when you are this entity, your story of your life, your journey is written up before you're born, right? So what's actually happening?
Maktub.
Yeah, maktub. What's actually happening with you is, as you are experiencing now your journey, it's making more sense as you go on.
As you go along. I think I feel like there is a radio show being born here.
This guy needs needs his own show. Like, you know what I like about your brilliance is, Gunifort, is that I think what you said about where we're from, and I must say I'm not that old, but I am a bit older, and I look at you and I see that you're already doing things in another way that my generation has been doing it, because there's a sense of, I don't know how to say it without disrespecting our parents, but a sense of not being able to fully manifest who you are because you're in this new space. And I see the way you guys are doing it is so inspiring, and especially all the people around you. It's really the insider-outsider experience. And in 2050, Africa is going to have, I think, 1 billion extra people, and you're an example for those kids that are growing up between now and 2050, and the same goes for you when it comes to Iran and all the people in the diaspora. I was wondering, reaching the end of this conversation, taking a few steps down into that subconscious or the door that enters our heart. Is there anything that you still want to share or feedback about this conversation? Because we started by asking what do we want at the end of this conversation.
Yeah, I sometimes have a feeling where I suddenly realize where I am, and I just had that, and I felt so grateful that I exist in this space and time, and that I can actually share something that people want to listen to. And it can be such a how do you say that, like strange experience if you start with something in your own brain and you kind of see it spreading, and it becomes real, and then it becomes bigger, and it starts to like spread so far that you are not even in control of that anymore. And I think that as human beings, besides loving and caring and nurturing each other, I also feel like we want to leave something behind, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that if you have the privilege to be able to do that, then you should be you should feel very blessed about it. So,
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Wow.
Gunifort, Lord Gunifort, come on, hit us with some final words.
Yeah. First and foremost, I almost had a similar experience as you just now, feeling very grateful, not only to be here, but also to have you in my life as a friend. And perhaps that's something for the people at home or in this room. Sometimes, whether it's God or the universe brings people in your life, and it comes left field, and you're not completely sure where the person fits in the current life that you have, but trust in your intuition, and be grateful when you have inspiring people around you. That's my first thing I wanted to tell you, Sev. And I love that you challenged me to think more from here and less, with this analysis and having to write everything up. Then a second thing I maybe want to add to today is, there's this famous quote by Mr. Chapman that says almost what you just said: after nourishment and shelter, people are most in need of stories. And if you really think about it, I have a baby boy right now, and I see it. After he's filled his belly and he's comfortable, he's safe, then it's story time. And how the stories reach him it's not the main thing. It could be a song, it could be a cartoon, it could be reading a book with me, it could be just hearing his grandmother and grandfather tell him stories, right? Yeah. So, yeah, this is one of my favorite storytellers, and again, I feel very grateful for this evening, and very grateful to have had this conversation with you, man.
Because you have conversations, and we'll obviously, I hope to have one of those with you too in the near future, and then you have a conversation that you need to guide within 60 minutes and try and get some people at home to also understand what you're talking about. And I'd like to thank the both of you for coming to Amsterdam, to the Balie. I would like to thank all the people here in the Balie who came through COVID-19 restrictions. Give them a round of applause. I think that's okay. Yeah. I would like to thank everybody at home who was watching the Tone Setters, and even if you're watching this later on, great to have you in our presence here at the Balie, and we'll be back hopefully for new episodes. Please check the website of the Balie. Stay tuned and take care till the next time.